Few things in life are more fun than giant robots. Some have risen to the forefront of pop culture lore to the point that even non-fans know who these characters are. Some rose to prominence during an earlier period in our history but continually show up in new forms of entertainment to refresh the brand that they represent. Still, others were dominant in overseas cultures but only made their way to Western markets in limited fashion. And while the story of characters like Optimus Prime and Megatron, along with their respective Ark and Nemesis shuttle crews, have been told time and again, every once in a while it's nice to hear about the successors to the mantle of leadership amongst the Autobot and Decepticon ranks. So strap in for this Toy Connections Toy History, because we're here to talk about the Autobot Supreme Commander, the leader of the Galactic Defense Force, the bot known as Star Saber. What we'll do here is talk about this amazing character as he existed in the Generation 1 Transformers toy line and the accompanying 1989 Japanese cartoon series. And along with Star Saber, we'll also discuss his equally important, ferocious companion of a robot, Victory Leo. And of course, we'll also dive into their impressive, gigantic merged robot form as Victory Saber. Let's begin. I'll start by pointing out that I did do a history and overview of Star Saber's Decepticon counterpart in an earlier video, the 1989 Decepticon leader known as Deathsaurus, so do check out that video if you have a few moments to spare. Longtime, die-hard Transformers fans may already be familiar with Star Saber, Victory Leo, and their combined power-up form of Victory Saber. Others may have heard about Star Saber when Takara released him in their Masterpiece line with the MP24 version back in 2015, along with the subsequent third-party Keith's Fantasy Club edition of Victory Leo, who was designed to scale and combine with the official Star Saber. Still, others may be hearing about this glorious pair of robots for the first time in this video or through the successfully funded 2021 Haslab campaign that brought Star Saber and Victory Leo into Hasbro's modern toy line. Either way, I welcome you all to enjoy this stroll down memory lane as we revisit this part of Transformers toy history. A look at the original 1989 exclusive Japanese pair of robots, and you'll see that they are quite a bit larger than the more familiar Autobots that we saw in the original 1984 Ark crew, with Star Saber's toy being close to 12 inches in height and Victory Leo being a comparable 10.5 inches tall. This makes sense given that Star Saber and Victory Leo were shown to be able to go toe-to-toe with combiner-sized robots during the Victory cartoon series. Star Saber is impressive on his own, being an imposing robot who just had the right colors and overall design look representing heroism in his time before the age of the anti-hero and edginess that was prominent during the 1990s. But breaking the big robot down a little, he fits in with the late 1980s Transformers era of Headmasters, Target Masters, and Power Masters. Why? Well, because he's considered as a Brain Master. What I mean by that is when you open up his chest and take out the first inner robot and slide that guy's chest open, you get this little guy, known as the Brain of Courage, who can serve as a pilot of sorts. Working back the other way, the Brain Master tucks into the chest of the smaller robot, who is simply known as Saber. The rest of the large body is known as the V-Star, and note that Saber can transform into a smaller spacecraft and merge with the V-Star to form a larger flying futuristic aircraft as shown here. The two can separate and also transform into what's known as the Firebase Battle Station, not too dissimilar to how the Power Master Optimus Prime and Super Jinrai figure could do in its 1988 release. And while both of these alternate modes are quite impressive, the majority of people I've met who own one of these prefer to display him in this amazing robot mode that we started with. But breaking him down into his Brain Master, smaller Saber body, and V-Star larger body with all the different configurations shows just how much bang for your buck you were getting if you managed to find him back in 1989. The front of the nose cone doubles as the hilt of his robot mode, and of course we've got the blade that he often did battle with in the cartoon. My blade has seen better days, what with some of the chrome loss, and he also has this blaster over here, and as such he's as versatile and impressive a Transformer as they get. Yes, the articulation is a little lacking, as it is with many Transformers of this time, but few toys of this era boast so many features all in one action-packed release. As for his cartoon appearances, it's noteworthy that he walked around a lot without his large helmet, particularly when he's at the Autobot base talking with his friendly comrades. As mentioned in my Deathsaurus video, Starsaber and Deathsaurus have a rivalry dating back literally hundreds of thousands of years. This has to do with the fact that Deathsaurus' planet-destroying fortress was a force that needed to be stopped way back when, and seeing as it was a space structure that Deathsaurus had been planning to conquer the universe with. Starsaber ended up trapping this fortress in the heart of a gravity cell called the Dark Nebula, and without the use of his fortress for its intended purpose, Deathsaurus' hate for Starsaber grew deeper and deeper. Flash forward to the year 2025, where Starsaber is the supreme commander of the Autobots and the bot in charge of the Galactic Defense Force. Starsaber forms a close mentorship and somewhat parental type bond with a human named Jan, though it should be noted that day to day that Jan hangs out with a smaller robot named Holy, who is actually represented in Micromaster form for his toy release, albeit renamed as Stakeout in his American release. I'll say that this is somewhat similar to Optimus Prime, serving as a role model of sorts to Spike, though unlike Spike, Jan's family was killed previously, making him an orphan. I will say though that Holy and Jan's sibling-like relationship is similar to that of Bumblebee and Spike during the early seasons of the G1 cartoon. Throughout the cartoon series, Starsaber is constantly leading the charge in battle, taking on any likes of Deathsaurus, Dino King, or Leo Kaiser among the other Decepticons, or Destrons as they were called in Japan. Starsaber's bravery is completely unmatched by any, and at times he even goes into battle while still injured from previous fights, even when his fellow Autobots try to stop him and tell him to rest up. And on the flip side, he is completely selfless, in that he has no problem sending injured Autobots away from the battlefield to avoid further damage, even if it means he ends up outnumbered and having to fight battles at a disadvantage. I have absolutely no qualms in saying this. Starsaber's purity, courage, and nobility is equal to that of Optimus Prime, even if Starsaber doesn't bear the Matrix like the Primes before him. Note too that Starsaber was considerably more powerful than most other Transformers, seeing as a lot of the time he could charge into battle and get things done like a one-man or one-robot army, if I may say. The series finale sees Starsaber and Deathsaurus engage in one final battle on the latter's revived fortress, with Starsaber emerging victorious. With help from both Jan and Victory Leo among others, Starsaber effectively stops Deathsaurus' fortress from crashing into and destroying the Earth, and we are left with the chilling scene of Deathsaurus' apparently lifeless body floating through space during the final minutes of the series. Starsaber's last animated appearance in the original cartoon continuity was in the single episode Zone cartoon in 1990, where he passes the title of the Autobot Supreme Commander to another large, brave, and noble Autobot, namely Diatlas. Now, a discussion of his manga and comic appearances is beyond the scope of this video, but I will just briefly mention that Starsaber's IDW publishing comic character is presented quite differently compared to the animated 1989 Japanese cartoon series. And while the content and information surrounding Starsaber is enough to be a video on its own, I'll say that his bond, both physically and emotionally with Victory Leo, is a vital part of this discussion. Yes, physically and for the purpose of photography and without any context for storyline, you may actually be tempted to buy some version of Victory Leo, be it tracking down his vintage form or any modern release like I mentioned earlier, simply because he just looks cool. But his storyline and how he came to be is a pivotal part of Transformers cartoon lore. You see, Victory Leo is actually a reformatted and reborn version of Jinrai. Yes, Jinrai as in Power Master Optimus Prime. Allow me to explain. While many of us in Western markets remember the 1988 Power Master Optimus Prime release as an updated, larger representation of the same 1984 Autobot leader, the story of this 1988 release is completely different in the Japanese cartoon canon. You see, the 1988 release in Japan, while by and large being the same toy as the American release, was known as Jinrai, and was not meant to be Optimus Prime at all in terms of character or sentience. The robot just looks like him. In fact, the robot itself was a lifeless body referred to as a Transector, and the Jinrai name was actually the name of a human who bonded to the Transector in Power Master or God Master form, as it was called in Japan, taking a standard sized robot form, then merging with its trailer to become Super Jinrai, then merging with a second Transector to take an even larger form. The ultimate form of Jinrai was this God Jinrai form shown here. I'll reinforce, the robot simply bears the likeness of Optimus but is not Optimus himself, as it is the human Godmaster bonded to the larger robot that controls the robot. However, as the Master Force series concludes, the Godmaster and larger Transector robot eventually become permanently separated, and larger Transector does indeed become a sentient being all its own. Thus, God Jinrai becomes an official Transformer in the traditional sense by the end of the 1988 Japanese Master Force animated series. If that sounds a little confusing, you might want to rewind the video a little bit or check out the information in a wiki article, as I'm doing my best to summarize it here. Flash forward to the 1989 Japanese Victory series, and God Jinrai is the Sector 2 commander of the Autobots, overlooking a different region of space from Star Saber. God Jinrai finds himself in battle with Deathsaurus while helping out Star Saber, and in this battle, God Jinrai is mortally wounded and left unable to function, and finding himself in a dying and degrading state at the Autobot headquarters. However, he manages to convince the other Autobots to reformat and reconstruct him into a previously conceived and already pre-existing standby design to become an altogether new Transformer, at least in body. And thus, through the efforts of Wheeljack, Perceptor, and Minerva, God Jinrai is reborn and remade into Victory Leo. While Victory Leo is indeed God Jinrai deep down, Victory Leo has a natural ferocity and uncontrollable nature that sometimes overrides God Jinrai's own, more calm nature, thus making him more of a wild card in battle. This eventually subsides though, and Victory Leo becomes more tame and less reckless in battle as the series progresses. And just like Star Saber, Victory Leo is a triple changer as well, given that he has this amazing feline mode as well as his spacecraft mode. And along with his two large guns and massive cannons, I would say that just like Star Saber, Victory Leo was equally as action-packed and feature-heavy compared to most other Transformers during the vintage era. The identical pair of guns can either be mounted onto his back or be placed onto his forearms, depending on how you want to display him. He also comes with a trio of missiles which can be placed into his large cannon. Probably the best feature of Victory Leo is how he can serve as an upgrade for Star Saber, and when merging these two large bots together, you end up with this heavily decked out combiner with a ton of ordnance. Yes, this is Victory Saber. And when we talk about shelf presence among your toys, this guy is indeed at the top of that list and is perhaps the coolest looking Autobot ever. Victory Saber also has a combined form in a larger merged spacecraft that was prominent not only as a toy, but also in the cartoon. And another cool thing was that their distribution was such that these figures were available for separate purchase in 1989, with Star Saber having a few different box variations himself. But what I've got here is the larger and also rare gift set box, which both were sold together as a set. My particular box also came with the original foam, instructions, and associated paperwork. Look, I know I've said a lot already, and I could talk forever about this wonderful pair of characters, but ultimately I'd like to hear from the rest of you. Did any of you know about Star Saber and Victory Leo as well as their Victory Saber combined form already, or are you getting the bulk of your information for the first time from me in this video right now? Also, as a follow-up question, since Star Saber and Victory Leo go down in history as characters who were just as important as the other iconic Autobots and Decepticons who we've become familiar with over the decades, do let me know in the comments section as well if you'd like me to continue producing videos about other Japanese or overseas exclusive Transformers. I'd love to hear from all of you about this topic. In any case, I'd like to give a special thanks once again to my Patreon supporters and channel members whose names can be found in the description section below. Visit patreon.com/toyconnections for some exclusive behind-the-scenes content and other benefits. Or click the join button next to my channel name to unlock exclusive badges and emojis for your use in the comments section of any Toy Connections video or live stream. And if you enjoyed this vintage Transformers toy history video, you can click on some of my other content here. Subscribe if you already haven't, press that like button to spread this video to more viewers, and share it with your friends. Otherwise, let's transform and roll out into the next video. Thanks again, and take care.